welcome. My name is Anna McDougall, and today I'm going to slow down and we're going to take the time to understand what loops are. Now, when you're first coming to programming, loops can be especially confusing because they don't really resemble anything that you tend to use in your day-to-day life. It's quite a new concept, so I'm going to slow right down and we're going to really step through what loops are and why they're useful. The simplest way I can explain it is that a loop allows you to do the same thing multiple times, right? Now, let's say I have a list of names, right? This is just generally. I have my name, I have my husband's name, and then my mum's name. All right, so let's say I have these in an array. And I want to console log all of them, right? One after the other. So I could do this. Yeah, let's actually, we should probably give this array a name. I'm going to give it the very exciting name of name array, console log, and then I could say name array 0. Then I could do console log name array 1, console log name array 2. Now, I don't know about you. This is exceptionally boring. I'm not having much fun typing this stuff out. And if this list were 10 or 12 or 100 lines or names long, I don't want to have to do this for every individual item. So instead of doing that, what I could use is a loop to do the same thing multiple times. Okay, that's the simplest way to explain what a loop is. All right, so rather than doing this, I could use, for example, a for each loop, which I actually have another video about, which I'll put up there, in order to execute this. But today we're looking at for loops, so I'll show you how to do this with a for loop. I will say though, generally with arrays, I think it's nicer to use a for each loop or for each method on the array. Okay, so let's do a for loop with this though. So we start with the keyword for, right? This is a special reserved keyword that JavaScript understands as beginning a loop. And then we have to declare what our iterator is going to be. Now the iterator, I'll write this down, iterator is the thing which tracks what spot we're up to in the loop, right? So in most cases, I would say probably 99% of cases, you're going to want to loop through every single item, be it in an array or a string or anything like that. So a lot of the time, you're going to start at 0 because that's the first index, and you're going to iterate up to the length of the string or the length of the array. The iterator is going to be the thing that counts at what index you are along that path, right? So if we are looking at this name array again, the first time through the loop, the iterator will be worth 0. The second time, the iterator will be worth 1. And the third time, the iterator will be worth 2, right? It'll go through that way, and that way we can kind of keep track of where we are in the loop at any given time. Now, the most common format for doing this for loop is to use I. And we start at 0, as I said, because we're often using the first index. So I technically stands for iterator, but it's probably easiest to just think of it as the index. Because in the majority of cases, that's exactly what it is. It's just keeping track of which index you're up to at any given time. And if you don't know what indexes are, I'll also link to a video up there that I made about that. Okay, so that's the first thing we do. We say, let iterator equal 0. That's where we're going to start. Now the second parameter, in fact, I'll put this here. So first parameter is the iterator. The second parameter is how long the iterator should go for, i.e. where it stops. Okay, so if we have 0, 1, 2, if we don't tell the iterator to stop, it's going to start looking for 3, which doesn't exist. Then that will probably cause an error, but even if it didn't cause an error, it would then move on to 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 7. And this could go on quite literally forever. So what we have to do is we have to define a spot in which this iteration will cease. Yeah, at what point will it stop iterating? Now, most of the time, this will be done this way. I, the iterator, is less than name array dot length. Okay. So what is this saying? This is saying name array dot length at this point is 3, right? Because there are 3 items in there. So it's saying once the iterator is at 2, yeah, or as long as the iterator is less than 3, so 0, 1, and 2 are all less than 3, continue looping, right? I'm going to write this here for you. As long as the iterator is less than the length, continue looping. Yeah, that's essentially what we're doing here by doing this less than. Okay? So this takes advantage of the fact that with indexes, they always start at 0, right? So the actual length is 3, but if we tried to go to index 3, like we said, that doesn't exist. So this is why we use less than here instead of less than or equal to or something along those lines, because we want it to stop after the last item. Yeah, because after this, it will go to 3, and then it will check, is it less than 3? Well, no, 3 is equal to 3. It's not less than 3, so it will stop, which is what we want. So then the last thing we do is we add. Now this plus plus, if you haven't seen this before, it just means I equals I plus 1. Yeah? Again, I'll write this down for you so you have it all here. Third parameter is what happens when the loop finishes, right? And in this case, I equals I plus 1. So what does this mean in a practical sense? This means that after we've done whatever we're about to ask it to do, this happens, right? I is increased by 1. I plus plus means I is increased by 1, and that continues our loop going, yeah? So it starts as I is 0. It checks if I is less than 3, which it is. At this point, it's 0. And then once it's done the thing, it will increase I to 2. And then the whole thing begins again, and it loops through, right? So in this case, we're going to just console log name array 0. We could also, just to make things interesting, we'll say index I contains name array 0. So we're using a template literal here so that when we log it, it will also log with the index. Oops, that should be I as well. Can you tell I'm tired? I'm getting there. Okay, so we have let I equal 0. There we set the base parameter. This is going to be our index. We check if 0 is less than 3. It is. So then we do this. We log index 0 contains Anna. Then I is increased by 1. So I is now equal to 1. Is I less than 3? Yes, it is. So then we log index 1 contains Alex. And then we add 1 to I. I is now equal to 2. Is 2 less than 3? Yes, it is. So then we log index 2 contains Virginia, right? Then I is increased and I is now equal to 3. Is 3 less than 3? No, it isn't, so the loop ends. That is the basic way in which this for loop is working. Yeah, it's working through everything we ask it to do. Now, as I said, you could also use a for each loop for this because it is working with an array. So one thing that is useful though is using for loops for strings. This is a fun little exercise that I actually did as part of my course, which is where the goal is to take in a string, create a function where you take in a string and then you convert that string into leet speak using a for loop. So we're not going to use the function form of this today because I just want to focus on the for loop. I don't want to confuse you with functions. So let's actually focus on that. Let's have a sentence. Sentence is going to be, I love going to the beach and swimming like a dolphin with all the incredible wildlife. There we go. I don't know. All right, and now we should probably assign it to something. That's an idea. So let's say let sentence equal. Okay, so we have our new sentence, and now what we need to do is create a loop so that we can actually replace all of these letters. So what we're actually going to do is create a new string, and we'll call it let sentence 1337 leet. Yeah. We're just going to create it like that. And in fact, just to be extra safe, we're going to make it an empty string. Right, then we're going to write a for loop. For let I equal 0. It's saying start at the very first letter of this sentence. Yeah. And if I is less than the sentence length, then do what we say next, and then increase. Let's begin by actually creating a new variable, a constant in this case, called current car, which is going to be whichever letter we're looking at this point in time, and it's going to be equal to whichever character we're on, which makes sense, current character. Okay, and that'll make things a little bit easier. Switch, we're going to say a switch statement. I'm going to make a video on switch statements in the future, so if you're not familiar with this format, maybe give it a Google, have a little look now, but there will be more info coming on this soon. So switch, and then we're going to indicate that we are talking about current character. Okay, and then we're going to open our brackets, and we're going to say case L. Yeah. And then we're going to say sentence leet plus equals 1 as a string. Yep. And so, and then we're going to say break. Okay. Then we're going to do this a few times. I don't love how VS Code doesn't format this nicely for me. Case I, sentence leet plus equals. Again, we're going to use 1 here. And then break. That's nicer, thank you. Prettier. If you don't have the prettier extension, please do get it. It'll make your life a lot easier. And then we're going to say, we're going to replace each E. We're going to replace with a 3. Okay. Then we're going to say case A. We're going to replace with a 4. Oops, as a string, please, McDougall. Break. And then lastly, oh no, not lastly, almost there, case S. We replace the 5. The break statements are my least favorite part of switches, but I understand why they're there. They're just annoying. T plus equals 7. Okay. Break. And then, importantly, we have to add a default case. Now, default case is pretty important to have with switch anyway, but in this case it's particularly important because if we don't add a default case in here, then whenever we find a character that doesn't fit any of these criteria, it's not going to be returned. And we need those characters for the rest of the sentence to make sense. So here we'll say sentence leet plus equals current car. Yeah, so it'll just return basically what we've already worked with. Okay, so now we have this cute little for loop. We use a switch. So what's happening? Well, we're going to start at the letter I because I equals 0, and that's the first letter of the sentence. And then it's going to check if I is less than the length of the sentence, which in this case 0 is definitely less than the length of the sentence. Then it's going to assign the current character to this constant called current car, and we set up a switch statement to evaluate what letter we're dealing with at the moment. So for example, for our first letter, it fits into case I because current car is equal to I, and then we're going to add a character to our new sentence, which is going to be 1, and then we're going to break. We're going to get to a space. Now space will do the same thing. Well, I will now equal 1. It is less than length, but it doesn't fit any of these cases, so it will drop down to the default. And once it gets to the default, it will just return the space to our new sentence. So hopefully by the time this actually finishes running, we should have a new sentence full of leet speaks. This will keep going all the way through. It'll replace this L with a 1. It'll replace this, not that I. Oh, we don't actually have that many, do we? Hey, where's the A? Oh, there's 1. So it'll get beach. We'll have a 4 in there. Oh, the E will turn into a 3. So let's have a look. Let's try it. Famous last words and see how we go. Nice. Okay, and I will copy paste this so you can see what we got. Here we go. Yeah, it is not pretty. There we go. So this is what we get back. So that's an example of how you could use a for loop to create an absolute monstrosity. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry that I feel like I've kind of stumbled through this video, but hopefully you've learned something and kind of understood how for loops are working, the way in which they iterate through, and what each of those 3 parameters in a for loop represent. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Bye.